Hello and welcome to Jane Success, the show where we explore success from the inside out. I'm Antoinette Olo, and in this conversation, I am joined by Nadija Bajrami. Nadija is a strategic trauma hypnotherapist. She is an end-of-life doula, a grief educator, and also a spiritual practitioner. And after undergoing 3 major brain surgeries, Nadija found herself questioning absolutely everything she knew about life, about success, about purpose, about healing, about everything. And that's what we're discussing in this conversation. Let's get into it. Hello, Nadija. How are you?
Hi, Antoinette. Very well, thank you. And thank you for having me here today.
Thank you for joining us. I was just saying before I click record that I'm so excited to have you join us and for this conversation, because the area of work that you're in is really, really interesting. And I think we need to be having more conversations about it.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So there's a side of development and growth and healing that people think is positive. You think about kind of moving forward, you think about transformation and all the positive sides. But I guess then there's the more heavy areas and the more kind of trauma and grief and loss. And that's actually kind of where your work sits in, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. Like in trauma, I'm a trauma hypnotherapist,
Mm.
mind coach, but I'm also a certified grief educator and of life doula as well as a spiritual worker, but definitely trauma and grief. Yes.
Fantastic. So how did you come to be doing this? Because I know a little bit about your kind of background and it's very interesting. So share with us what brought you to this, because it's very specific.
Absolutely. It's you don't. I always say to people, you don't wake up one morning thinking, "Well, okay, I will help people in grief and I will
Yeah.
help people who have been through trauma." And it
Yeah.
wasn't the plan initially. So I have like business degrees and finance degrees, and I think at the time when I was a bit younger, a couple of decades ago, I thought that with my life would be a straight line of like, right, I'll keep being in sales and all that. And I used to be a sales director until actually a couple of years ago.
Wowza.
And was living in France, so I'm French, as you can hear it, but I'm now between Ireland and France. I travel a lot, but based in Dublin.
Yes.
And in 2014 and 15, I had to go through 3 brain surgeries. So I had some brain tumors. When at the time I was a sales director and I thought I was happy, but my body and everything else was saying to me, well, something is dysfunctioning. So I wasn't as, let's say, spiritually aware of as I am now.
Yes.
But when I went through the surgeries, I remember the last one that was supposed to be the last one. So, well, I spoke to whoever was above me and I said, if I get better, I promise I'm going to find my path, whatever that is. And I had an opportunity to come to Ireland out of the blue, even though I don't believe in coincidences. And that's where I met all the right people and I left everything behind, started from scratch again and found a corporate job. That's how I moved to Ireland. But very quickly after that, I met the right mentors, tutors, teachers, and graduated in hypnotherapy, trauma hypnotherapy. Then I met my spiritual mentors as well. And here we go now. That's that's me today,
Wow.
doing what I think definitely I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah,
I love that. And that was such a kind of quick history of your journey. But I think I can hear a lot of people just thinking, firstly, the fact that you came from being a sales director and you said you weren't spiritually aware to now. I love that because I guess it shows that the kind of the transition of a transformation that can happen just
absolutely.
like that. Yeah. And that's from the having the brain tumor that you had. I guess your perspective
Definitely,
changed.
because at the time I said, well, the first surgery didn't go well. It left me
Mm,
paralyzed for a couple of
gosh.
months. And
Right.
then we had to do corrective surgeries. And the second surgery went a bit better, but still not right. And then the third surgery, thankfully, I mean, everything went well after a long surgery. And I had time to think, when you're in hospital and you have a bit of time off, you have a bit of headspace to think because you have nothing else to do. And I said, well, this is trying to teach me something. That's
Mm,
the sentence actually that kept coming into my mind over and over again. I said, this is trying to show me something that like something is dysfunctioning in my life. And I said, I have to figure out what I'm supposed to do really, because it's not that. And I knew for a long time, people used to come to me, even my teams, I was managing loads of people, always felt comfortable talking to me, opening up to me, being managed by me. And I said, okay, well, I definitely have a skill of listening, active listening. and helping people. And from a very young age as well, my brother is an older brother, and he taught me a lot about psychology, different, Carl Jung, and different things about psychology and the subconscious mind. So I was already immersed in this to some extent, a very spiritual family as well. So I said, okay, well, what can I do with all this? And I had time to think, and then I did some hypnotherapy on me because out of the blue, I was looking for somebody to help me. And when I recovered, when I came out of hospital, I found an amazing lady that I worked with on and off for about 2 years. And after that, I started to, think, right, I will go abroad again. I lived in the UK, in Scotland for 8 years. But then I said, well, initially I would have liked to go back to the UK, but this opportunity came up in Dublin, for the good reasons anyway. But what I mean is, it's when things happen in life, these adverse experiences, it's up to us to see if we want to grow through them or not. And that's what I decided to do as well.
I love that. That's such an important point you raised, because I think you said it earlier, which is when you were lying in that hospital bed, the thought that kept
Mm,
coming through your head was that this is trying to show me something. And I
yes.
don't know, I think there's a saying that's something like, maybe that the world is, or life is actually trying to redirect you. So if you feel like hitting a brick
Yes.
wall, maybe you're supposed to be doing something completely different. And obviously you were
I
supposed to
could
be
have
doing
gone
something
back.
different.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
could have gone back to my life. I
Yes.
could have gone back, like recovering, but I knew,
Yes.
we won't have enough time today, but when we speak about the gut feeling, something in my gut was telling me this is not right.
There's something more.
There's something else for you. I didn't know what. And when I came to Ireland, I came with my cat and a suitcase. I had no clue what I was doing there. I said, okay, had the job. But other than that, I have no clue why I came here. But
Love
everything
it.
fell into place.
I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. Exactly. And when you're ready, all the things come into place. I love that. So let's kind of delve into your expertise. I think, as you say, there's a whole realm of kind of the intuition and all of those types of things. And I know that there's definitely time to have a conversation around that at another point. But in terms of kind of the grief piece, what's it taught you then? I guess working with people who are at that point in their life, as a doula, and working with people that have gone through these
Mhm.
traumas, what would you say at this point in your life has been kind of a key takeaway, that is something you want people to know heading into this conversation?
So just one thing I didn't mention is my life has been marked by multiple losses. So that's
Right.
kind of the grief part as well.
Mm,
Why I chose the grief after therapy. I mean, why I kind of tried also to work in grief, because
mm.
I lost my dad very young and I lost lots of male figures. And
Interesting.
I suffered from what we call the unprocessed grief,
Right.
which means I thought everything was absolutely fine. You know, you have your family support and everything, and you just grow up. I was 9 when my dad died, and other people after that, and one of my partner at the time died when I was young as well.
Mm,
So what I mean is, I just went through life knowing that I had the losses, but thinking I was just absolutely fine and that I had to get on with it because that's what society teaches us. So on that grief part, working in people like who are grieving the loss of a person or other types of grief, we can talk about that.
well,
But loss of identity, loss of a relationship, loss of a job, because grief actually is multifaceted. But my key takeaway is two or three things. It would be, there's no timeline in grief. And I think we've heard that before, but it's very important to repeat it, because once you're in the grief, in the process, you think, oh my God, hang on, it's been 6 months, 1 year. Now I have to move on. I mean, why am I still feeling like that? The question I hear a lot from people I work with is why. Why is a very abrasive question. It's very aggressive. When we start to ask ourselves why, we compare ourselves to other people. So first of all is grief is no timeline in grief, and your grief is as unique as your fingerprints. These are really two important points, because working with different people from different, countries, we always come to the same conclusion. Why am I feeling like that?
yeah.
Why am I still feeling like that? I mean, shouldn't I be doing this instead of that?
Mm,
So there's no timeline. There's no one way to grieve. There's only your way. And when you're grieving, only your grief matters. We don't compare griefs as well. It's very important, because I work with people who lost their children, some their parents, their pets. There's no hierarchy in grief. That's another important key takeaway, because you will hear a lot. somebody says, oh, I lost my child, she was only 6, and that's awful. And everybody will say, well, there's no worse loss than the loss of a child. But the problem is somebody else who could be childless, who only had their neighbor who was like their mother to them, the neighbor dies, for them it's their biggest loss. So that's why, I mean, we can't compare grief. So I don't know if that kind of answers a bit your question as well,
No, it
but
does.
it's very important to mention that no comparison in grief, no timeline, and your grief is as unique as your fingerprint. And maybe another thing I might just mention is that we live, sorry, in a death illiterate and grief illiterate society, and I have no shame in saying it. We are afraid, of like talking about grief. Like if you meet someone and the person says, "Oh, I've just lost my mother," and we're paralyzed. Oh,
Yes,
oh, I'm so sorry. That's the first thing you'll say. I'm so sorry for your loss. But we actually lost for words because we're not educated in grief. And the society nowadays, I mean, is just pushing us to, right, get on with it, like basically get rid of it very quickly so you can go back to normal. But
exactly.
once we experience grief, it's a new normal. So I was talking about different types of grief with loss of identity, end of a relationship. Grief steals part of your identity. So you will never really be the same again. You will have to learn to accept to some extent the updated version of you.
I'm so pleased that this is kind of the starting point for our conversation because there's everything that you said there would definitely kind of going to go a little bit deeper into it. So at the point when people come to you, obviously,
Mm.
as you said, you're working with people in deep trauma and in grief. And obviously, I imagine people are feeling stuck when they're coming to you. So what is it that people are not understanding? And you said that one of the things you mentioned is people are asking why. From your perspective, what are some of the kind of patterns that you're seeing that
Mhm.
because you've worked with so many people that are experiencing grief.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So, what are these things that perhaps people are not understanding about grief or about what they're going through or about the kind of healing process that is important to understand?
Well, there's two things here. There's trauma and grief. I'm gonna see why I say that because I'm gonna explain, sorry, why I say that because there's like not every grief has trauma, but every trauma has grief. Okay, so it's important to kind of distinguish a bit because we have people who have been through trauma, and every trauma has some sort of grief. For example, neglect in childhood is the grief of a life you could have had but you never had. But you have people who go through grief without trauma. An example, without comparison, somebody loses their grandmother who's 101 years old. It's terribly sad because we love Granny,
Mm.
but there's no trauma there because it was a natural passing. We knew she was declining, so there's no trauma. So I'm explaining this because then people will feel slightly different, when they come to me. If somebody comes to me on trauma work, so like they're working on something that happened in the past or that recent past or like when they were younger, very often what they don't understand is why it's still affecting them again in this adult age that they are. So this is always the first thing I get in every single client is, I thought I was over it. I thought I worked through it, but it's something is coming back because I still feel I'm repeating the patterns. This is something that I really hear a lot with trauma is, I thought I worked through it and I'm doing it again. Let it be in relationship, finding the same type of jobs, bosses, partners. People come and the first thing they don't understand is, how is it that they can't move forward? What is preventing them? And I'm going to bring this little piece of education again is because I talked about the fact that society to me is death illiterate, and I think it's also trauma illiterate. Because when people come to me, I work with kids as well, but mainly with adults. When adults come to me, they say, well, surely it can't be something that happened to me when I was in, primary school that is affecting me. But believe me, every time I work with somebody in trauma, everything that the patterns in adulthood is rooted in childhood. So that's really the first thing that I usually get when people come is like, you have to help me fix this. That's
Right.
the word I'm hearing as
Yeah.
well. I love that. fix this. I say, well, if I can fix you, well, I can't even fix myself. You're lucky. Because I always say to people, I can't fix you. You're not
Mm,
broken,
mm,
you know? So these are the two real things that I get is I don't understand why I keep doing the same thing. Why is this happening again? And I need a way to fix this. But I don't believe we fix anything. We help people understand that their current patterns are rooted in something that happened to them. This is really for the trauma part, you know. It's important just to mention it because it's slightly different that when people come specifically with grief, even though there is, a relation in between the two of them. And there's something I always say is, to me, healing, because we talk a lot about healing, it's not about fixing. Everybody will define it in a different way, but it's about feeling safe enough to meet the real you. And what really people lack usually when they've been through trauma is safety. So that's why they feel stuck as well, because they tell you, I feel stuck. I can't believe it's like happening again. Because the mind, I mean, what I call the trauma brain, brings you back to what is familiar. So when the brain has been used to chaotic situations or difficult environment, conditional love, whatever, well, the mind will bring you back to similar situation in your adulthood. So that's repetitive patterns. It's just on the side of trauma, we usually define trauma in the therapeutic world as any experience that overwhelms your ability to cope. So it could be anything. I'm trying to debunk a myth here because when people come, they use the word trauma very, lightly, but they think it's only neglect or
mm.
abuse. Trauma is any experience that overwhelms your ability to cope. I have loads of people coming for fear of public speaking. You would think, okay, well, learn, go online, see how you can prepare PowerPoints, and then you'll be fine. 9 times out of 10, with the people I worked with who came to me for that specific issue, it was linked to bullying at school.
Wowza.
So you see, any experience that overwhelms your ability to cope.
Yes.
And at least with just that piece, people understand that, oh, so then I had trauma.
Yes.
It doesn't, because when they come, there is a sense of feeling stuck, not understanding why, and then thinking that they're just making things up
Mm.
or that there's just something wrong with them. No, it's just that the nervous system doesn't feel safe enough to move forward without using outdated coping mechanisms.
Wow, that's a really powerful example because I can just hear a lot of jaws dropping, like, oh my goodness, this is something that we might think, as you said, is such a minor thing or just
I
learn
know.
this or practice. And it's
Mhm.
like actually rooted in something really significant that happened and something could have happened ages ago. Definitely. So it just
Absolutely.
shows you how these things stay on in us, which we'll definitely go on to kind of explore in a bit more detail. So in terms of healing, because you touched on that word healing, what are people doing that we think is working or moving us forward, that we think is healing work, that we think is going to help us, but that actually those activities are not actually healing. And in fact, they might just be a diversion from the real work of what we need to be doing.
I think thank you. It's a very nice question. And hopefully I'll answer something that is relevant to people. But very often, again, from my experience, I think we get confused between healing and self-care.
Right. Okay.
So you see, self-care is very important. Right? It's caring for our needs, for, like physical, body, mind. But it doesn't really mean healing. And you
Mm,
just said something, you said, well, what people are doing, but they're not really necessarily healing. So I love having my nails done, my hair done. I'm going to go once a month. So to some extent, you can think, well, it is quite cathartic. It's healing. You're there. You're just resting. You have nothing to think about and somebody's looking after you. This is not really healing now, is it? Because you're not working on your nervous system. See, like healing, like the body and the mind are very much in relationship. And what is important, the healing process, as I said before, it's not fixing yourself. It's to re-regulate your nervous system so that you feel safe enough to meet yourself. So to do that, obviously, yes, you can go to the gym. I do that. I encourage people. You can have your hair done, have a spa. All this is helping you because it helps your worthiness, your sense of self-esteem. But it is not necessarily helping a nervous system to be regulated. See? So I don't know if that makes any sense, but like the healing work, the deep healing work is when you get very honest that something is not right here in my life. And with me, something is not right because I keep repeating patterns, I suffer, I'm in chronic physical pain, and I need to do something. So, and as I said, we use the word healing very easily,
Yes.
and it means something different to everybody. But again, for me, it's like being very honest about yourself that there is something that needs to be looked into. And then once you start looking into it, is taking all the goodness of the difficult situation that you went through. That's the growth and that's the healing phase. But to heal, I mean, again, it could be anything. People could give you loads of examples of healing. But for me, we have to, from experience again, to have some practices that are somatic in the body and also the mind. So therapy, like hypnotherapy, talk therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, different types of therapy will work with the mind, help also the body, but it's very important to couple it with somatic practices to release, breathing techniques, breath work, because our traumas and our grief are stored in the body. We talk about the trauma brain, we talk about the grief brain. So it means that they're stored in our body. So what people do that they think is healing is, I would say, just don't get confused between self-care and healing. Healing, I'm going to say something weird, but healing sucks. It does.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, it's a therapist saying this. It sucks. You know why? Because it's hard. When people come to me, they think we're just going to have a social chat and have a cup of coffee. I said, people, we're going to do deep work. It's not going to be very easy. So initially, after session 2, 3, it's cool. I feel great. And when we get in the thick of it, and when we start the releasing, the cleansing process, it's ugly.
Yes.
I mean it. It's important to understand that because I think we sometimes, we fantasize about healing. We think it's that a beautiful thing, this, bubble of light. But before we reach that stage of like feeling floaty, we have to go through the cleansing process. And that requires, as I said before, honesty and courage. That makes sense. Hopefully it does.
No, it absolutely does. And everything you've said makes complete sense. And when you talked about the fact that healing is actually not this beautiful, light and airy
Hmm.
fairy experience, that is so true. So I guess to go on from that, what do people avoid? What do you find are some of the common things that people, I don't know if do we know that we're avoiding them or are we avoiding them without knowing? But what would you say you've seen as the biggest things that people are avoiding that's actually blocking them from healing?
Again, from experience, the first thing is obviously facing it, like
Mm.
which is like denial, a bit like in grief. There's different stages in grief, even though they're not linear. It's denial. Very often people come, again, not all the time, thankfully, but I like when I have discovery calls with my potential clients, we talk and let's say 3 out of 10 clients will tell me, I don't even know why. I mean, you're a very nice lady. Don't take this road the wrong way. I don't even know why I'm on the call because actually I don't think I'm that bad.
Right.
But that's the thing I'm hearing a lot. I don't think I'm that bad. I said, great. Well, then we've nothing to do there. Have a lovely day. But I joke and then I ask you 2 or 3 more questions and then they realize, oh my God. So what I mean is denial is something, first of all, that actually stops them from healing because they see things dysfunctioning, but they brush it away. So no, it's nothing, there's nothing. It doesn't require therapy. I'm fine. Somebody I know sometimes told me some times ago said, well, not everybody goes to therapy, Shirley. I said, I know. You can see it.
Yeah. No, it's true.
So denial, that's one thing. And then not being willing to go through the ugly part, being honest again. the suffering. Because at some stage, if you're doing proper healing, it's a journey. We know that. We'll never probably complete it in one lifetime, but you will find some very uncomfortable moments.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. That's really, no, that was really insightful. And I think it's important for people to hear that from someone who's working with people going through these things all the time, because I think we all need to hear it, don't we? And it's, of course, it's human, isn't it? Because nobody's like, I
Absolutely.
want to go through this painful and heavy and horrible experience. It's like, I experienced it when I experienced it. I don't want to go back there.
Correct. That's very important what you just said there, Anton. It's very important because that's what I
Yeah.
hear a lot as well.
Mm,
Said, I've already been through that, Nadia. Why do I need
exactly.
to go through it again?
Yes.
Now, you don't necessarily have to go through it again. Not in the way I work. But you're gonna have to clean something. You have to cleanse it. It's like I always use metaphors in my work. I tell people if you mop the floor, well, you're gonna have the dirty water. Surely you're not gonna bring the dirty water inside now. You're going to throw the dirty water. But you have to mop the floor. Once you mop the floor, obviously, before you mop the floor, it's not clean. Then it gets cleaner, but there's still the dirty water that need, to be evacuated, basically. So that's why I say to people, you're not going to bring your dirty water. Maybe some people do. I don't know. I don't. But, you bring your dirty water back home and you reuse it. Usually we don't. So it's the same thing. Like you can't, you know, actually, I'm going to use another metaphor. When I was younger, my brother, his source of inspiration he is. I used to love baking, but I'm also a clean freak. I've always been a clean freak, so I would start bake and then I would cry because I was very young because the kitchen was a
It's a mess.
mess. And then my brother said, "Well, you can't make the cake if you don't make a mess in the kitchen because you're going to be very happy when the cake is out of the oven. But before it gets out of the oven, smelling very nicely, you're going to have to make a mess on the table." The same with therapy. I know metaphors seem sometimes like childish, but they're actually very important for the brain
Mm.
to actually understand how it works. It's like you can't heal without a bit of mess in between.
I love that. Your brother sounds like a genius. That's really, that's
I'm
awesome.
telling you, if you only knew, I always tell him that he's a source of inspiration, but he says
Yeah.
no.
Love it. I love it.
you know?
So that, no, that is definitely something that we all need to kind of keep in mind. So there's a couple of things actually. So one, you talk about the trauma brain actually. You've mentioned that quite a few times. Where are we storing this trauma? I know you said that it stays in us. So how are we storing this trauma? What is the trauma brain and the trauma body? What are these things?
Well, again, from experience, from my own knowledge, studies, experience, and,
Mm,
and clients, is I mentioned before, trauma is any experience that overwhelms our ability to cope.
mm,
And then something that I hear a lot from different trauma teachers and people I've followed is trauma healing is releasing what never belonged to us in the first place. So I'm saying this why? Because as children, as younger adults, but as very often as children, we take on things that never belonged to us. So because of the environment, maybe we become hypervigilant, maybe love was conditional, maybe the primary caregivers did not meet meet our needs the way they should have for different reasons. And then we, as children, grow and grow into, younger adults and then adults, and we have to survive. So we create some coping mechanisms. So the trauma is stored obviously in the brain, the nervous system, and in the body because they work together. And the way we usually feel it is, for example, in the body will be chronic pain, same part of the body. It could be, then repetitive pattern, as I said. That's how you know that something is stored in you and that it is, I don't like to say dysfunctioning, but something outdated
mm.
is within you. So we store it in the body, we store it in the nervous system, and the trauma brain, as I call it, like the trauma brain is the nervous system that didn't feel safe at some point in life, and since then has been running on fight, flight, freeze, fawn mode to help us survive, to help us actually go through life, avoiding any dangers. The problem is because the trauma brain experienced some sort of dangers at some point in life, then it gives you the impression that there is always a danger. And anxiety, chronic pain, as I said, because the body gets tense, or anxiety, or depressive states, overthinking, over worrying. All these symptoms are a part of this trauma process, and the brain sends you these symptoms or creates the symptoms in a wicked way to actually help you feel safe, because it doesn't want you to go through what you went through already. But obviously it doesn't work anymore, because at some stage your body and your mind are suffering.
Thank you so much. That's a really great explanation. And one of the things that you that you shared there, actually, which was going to be my next question, was what are some of these signposts or symptoms and things that we can perhaps look out for that may be telling us or trying to tell us and communicate with us there's something more happening? And one of the ones you mentioned was overthinking, because I feel like I
Mhm.
know so many people who are like, oh, I'm always thinking, I'm constantly thinking, I'm in my head all the time. And in fact, I would say I'm thinking all the time, but you just mentioned that as actually that could be one of the things. It could be more than just,
Absolutely.
I've got a busy job and my role's worrying me, or I'm stressed about this thing. It could be actually something deeper.
But we can actually illustrate that without, obviously, like throughout my practice work is like my clients, somebody, and very often I would work with what people say driven individuals. That's how they describe it. So I'm very driven, like you just said, I think all the time, Nadia. I'm very busy. Amazing. I'm very busy as well. You probably are very busy. We all are very busy. The thing is, there's a difference between busy and overthinking, you know? So when you are between 0 and 7, the child, any child, doesn't have what we call the prefrontal cortex, the rational mind yet. Right? It's not there yet. So whatever happens at that time in your life becomes a program. So if the child experienced something that showed him there was a threat, or that he needed to be hypervigilant, scanning the environment for potential threats, usually they grow up into somebody who will be overthinking, because they have to make sure they have it all figured out. They have to make sure they are safe. They have to make sure they scan everything. So there's a sense of overthinking, the sense of control, being in control, because control, unfortunately, gives us a wrong sense of safety. But because that's how, at some stage, the signal was, I need to make sure there's no threat. I need to make sure I have everything covered.
What you just said is really powerful. And one of the things you said also about the fact that it's between this ages of 0 and 7. And it's such a young age, isn't it, for us to be actually
Mhm.
absorbing all of these things. So it's no wonder that people don't remember it. No wonder we don't know. No wonder it's actually happening, which is, I guess, to go back to that stuck piece to say, well, you don't know because it happened before you're able to be aware of it.
And sometimes you remember, but also the mind suppresses it to protect you. We have to remember that. The
Right.
mind can also push to suppress, not again because, you're confabulating, whatever. It's because it happened, but your mind doesn't help you to remember because it's trying to protect you. So sometimes later in life, people start to remember some stuff. Not all the time, but most of the time, we start to remember when we are in a capacity to deal with it. Suppressed feelings at the time we suppress because we protect ourselves. The same with, we talked about, again, trauma and grief, but for example, dissociation. It's a term
Mm-mm.
we hear a lot. You see, between 0 and 7, as I said, there's no capacity to know what's right or wrong. Whatever happens, the child thinks they're responsible. Therefore, so I have to scan the environment. Love is conditional. Mommy will only love me if I do that. And then you grow up into people pleaser, overthinker, whatever, ambitious people, what we always call just ambition. Sometimes it's not just ambition, it's validation seeking. It's like doing as much as I can so my mom can be proud of me. Had actually loads of clients, when we talk about, about that, they realize that their choices in life now, oh my God, it's all to please my mother. Because all they tried to do from a very young age was to please their mother because love was conditional. It's an example. So dissociation, for example, is you go through a difficult situation, but you try to protect yourself so you don't really feel much. fully shut down because it's too heavy
One of
to
the
live
things
again.
one of the
Yeah.
things you said that's really powerful, actually, and I think it's important for people to hear that, is that the people that are coming to you, because I think when we hear the word trauma, for some
Hmm.
people, they might think, "Well, that's not me. I've
Correct.
got everything together. I'm living my life. I've got my wonderful job, and I'm getting on with it." So we don't associate ourselves with trauma, but actually, from what you've said, actually, there's things that maybe on the outside don't look like trauma, but you don't know that actually underneath it, there's something more going on. Is that, would you say that's correct?
Absolutely, any experience that overwhelms your ability to cope, and this is, and
Mm,
what you just said is extremely important because as soon as I start to use the word trauma, I'm always making sure that I explain clearly to people what trauma is. Is any experience that overwhelms your ability to cope, or actually uh, overwhelms your capacity to integrate an experience. Same thing. See, so this is why if you actually look at that, you think, oh my God, I think we all had trauma, some sort of trauma,
yes, yeah,
you know?
definitely, definitely. Before we segue into the doula aspect of your work,
Hmm.
from a trauma perspective, you mentioned that people come to you and they're like, "Fix me." There's, I think we've got kind of all grown up in this world where we're problem solving. We're taught to be good
Hmm.
problem solvers, and so we see this as a problem to be solved. So, what would you say to that then, to everyone out there who's trying to kind of solve some kind of issue within themselves? How is this showing up, and what's your guidance on it?
Well, some people might not like what I'm going to say
Oh,
now, but I will anyway. It's like, like, so trauma healing is a process, as I said, but I always say to people, why do you want to get rid of what happened to you? Because it's your story. You have to learn to live alongside it. That's healing. You're not getting rid of what happened to you because what happened to you is part of your identity. When people are coming trying to just remove everything, oh, I'll get rid of all this, I'm sick of that. Okay, I get it. Actually, there are ways to help you change your mind and the way you think about what happened to you so you understand that you're not a victim of your, an unfortunate victim of your past circumstances, but an ingenious survivor. So you take that with you and you realize that I try to tell people, no, what happened to you is what shaped you in who you are today, this amazing being. So it's about working on changing how you feel about what happened to you, not getting rid of what happened to you. First of all, we can't. And two is, why would you like to get rid of part of your history? Who built who you are? And even if it's not, sometimes you don't really understand it because, well, I was raped. Why would I actually want to carry that with me? And that's awful. So we're not carrying the rape. We're carrying everything the rape helped you to become. Unfortunately now, helped you. I use that word, but what is the growth that happened after this traumatic experience? So really, I think it's important to understand that it's not about deleting or completely closing the door. We can't do that. It's about learning to reframe how you feel about that so your nervous system can feel safe and then your body can feel safe.
thank you so much. And that's something that I think we really need to hear that, don't we? Because I think that of course, understandably, want to distance ourselves
Yes,
from these
absolutely.
things as much as
Mm.
possible. But actually, you're saying that it sounds like that can be a big blocker to actually that
Mm.
healing process if you're
It's
not
finding
prepared.
meaning,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah.
Yes.
Like grief, it's the same in grief.
Yes.
I studied with David Kessler, an American grief specialist. And
Mm,
when I talk about people, his book is called Finding Meaning. It's one of his last books. And when I talk about finding meaning with some of my clients in grief, initially they look at me and say, well, how can I be meaning
mm,
to losing my child?
yeah.
Same to trauma. We're not talking about meaning about the event itself. We're talking about this event happened. How did I turn my wounds into wisdom or my pain into purpose? That's what I mean by meaning or reframing how we feel about what happened.
Thank you so much. Yes, I know that it's kind of a bit of a quippy thing to say, but it's that you grow through what you go through, isn't it? That's the thing, isn't
Yeah,
it? Um,
absolutely. We
all
didn't ask for it,
yes,
but it happened. So now it's about growing through it.
Thank you so much. So, to segue then into kind of the doula aspect and that work, because obviously I think, as you said, they are interrelated in some way, but they are separate and
Absolutely,
they are
yes, yes,
different.
yes. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about that. So for anybody who's listening, who's like, what do you actually do? What does that mean that you're a death doula?
So a death doula or an end of life doula, it's actually we have a holistic way of helping people in their end of life. So we're not doing therapy with them. We're not doing like I mean some people we can do a bit of massage or but we're not caring, like we're not changing people, we're not like really moving them. But an end of life doula is somebody who helps someone with compassion to live their life until there is no life left. So we're not actually helping people die. We're helping people live until they die. Very
Oh.
important. There's something I keep hearing. Oh yes, you help people dying.
That, and I
Yeah.
will put my hands up and say that's what I thought that you were going to tell us.
So
Yeah.
we help people live until it's time to die. So sometimes some people can hire us to be with them, them or their family, but to be with the dying person in their last moments. You can spend the night there, 1, 2, 3 nights, depend how we work. But it's that support, that emotional support that maybe I don't know. Do you have any regrets? Would you like to rekindle with somebody that you didn't speak with for a long time? It's really helping them live until it's time to die. Because in this world, again, coming back to death illiterate society, when people are in critical state and not just in like end of life anyway, for example, um, from experience, what the people I worked with always told me is, well, they think I'm already dead. Had the lady said, well, they just put me in that corner there and they sit there all day long doing nothing. And this lady was a piano teacher in Dublin, actually, and God rest her soul now. She passed. And when I worked with her, we spoke and we bonded, and it's that emotional support and talking and see how I can help her make the best of the time that she has left. And all she wanted would have been like we was at the time to play again the piano. So I got a music therapist, came with me, we did some work together, brought a bit of a small piano. And it's just to show people that there's still life in them and help them and help other people understand that people in end of life are still living. And our job is to help them make the most in a holistic way. We're not GPs, we're not therapists at the time, because emotional, holistic support. It could even be like helping them find somebody to write their will. I mean, helping them organize things, but really helping them to make the most of the life that is still to be lived.
That has been a complete education for me. Honestly, this is why we're having these conversations, isn't it? Because as you said, people don't know. I didn't know. And the fact that I guess even in that terminology of saying death doula versus end of life doula, I feel like they do have different, they sound different. There's
That's
a
why I
different
actually
way.
I know, for example, the Americans would
Yeah.
use a lot death doula,
Mm,
or like in Europe,
mm,
overall anyway, we use a lot end of life
mm,
because, again, to me, death doula means that's it. Like, end of life is I'm nearing the end of my life, but I'm
mm,
still alive.
mm.
And again, no, I mean, can't blame anybody, but due to like capacity issues, beds issues, I mean, different time issues, like people in end of life very often are left like aside. And that's why there's people like us who can just bring some extra support to just see what they would need to make the most of the life that's left to live.
And what's the earliest point that people contact you? When are you getting contacted then to support
It could
somebody?
be actually, to be honest, it
Mm.
could be from diagnosis. It could be like quite early. It
No.
could be somebody being diagnosed with stage 4 cancer, but it
Okay.
could still be that the stage 4 cancer is lingering for a couple, months, or even
Right.
sometimes we've seen years. And so it could be the diagnosis, like
Right.
understanding, like, okay, it could be the actual when they're in a hospice. It could be when they want to die at home, but the family's far away. So maybe there might be one family member who can help and they would contact an end of life doula as well to come and, come and spend some time,
Mm.
maybe some nights, depending again on how each person works. So honestly, I would say I know we have an image of like, oh, when they're dying,
Yes,
literally.
yes. I thought literally that
No,
the last
no,
night or the last,
no.
yeah.
That is a possibility, yes.
Mm.
Sometimes you actually are hired by the family, not even just by the client, but by the family, because they're far away and they don't want their loved ones to die alone. But it could also be just when you get a diagnosis and people need a bit of support, they need help, they're like all over the place. That, for example, the son lives far away in Australia and they're like in Dublin or whatever, I don't know, in France. So I mean, I work mainly in people in Dublin as the end with the end of life, but and Switzerland as well. But it could be that people are like, okay, I don't know what to do now. I don't know. Am I going to die? And I mean, the doctor told me I had like, I don't know, 6 months to live. What am I supposed to do? Sometimes they know, sometimes they're organized, but sometimes they're like all over the place.
Yeah.
Understandably enough.
It's a lot to take on, isn't
You
it?
know?
And as you've said a number of times, we're death illiterate, and it's
Yes,
not something
yes.
people want to talk about. So let's talk about it. So obviously, having worked with so many people at this kind of stage of their life, what would you say? What are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned? How has it kind of affected you? What have you been taking away from it?
Oh, well, first of all, when you work in the therapy, stroke healing field, it helps you to heal yourself as well through your clients. All the things that you see, you witness, you hear, it's very cathartic for me anyway. I can't say for us, but for me, the couple of takeaways is life is a gift, time is precious, use it wisely, and listen to not your heart, listen your soul. I think there's a book called The Five Top Regrets of the Dying by
Mm.
Bronnie Ware. It's an Australian nurse, I think. And working with people end of life has been totally life changing for me because it really taught me that, right, what am I looking for actually? Do I want to be on my deathbed in a couple of years? Hopefully, long time from now, but and having all those regrets because most of the time, in fairness, when I work with somebody who was at the end of life stage, they always told me, I wish I didn't work so hard. I wish I spoke to her again. I wish I didn't hold those grudges and I wish I followed my heart. Just a few examples. So I would say key takeaways is time, life is a gift, time is precious. And one more thing is forgiveness as well.
Right.
Forgiving ourselves doesn't mean forgetting. I repeat that. We've heard that before, but it means freeing yourself. So something I really heard a lot as well is I wish I could have forgiven him before now. Because here again, the grudges are stored in the body.
Right. Wow. That's really kind of interesting. That was actually my next question is, what are, from your experiences, the kind of biggest regrets that the most people seem to kind of talk about? And would you say the ones you've mentioned, that's what they are? Is the
Definitely. What I really heard is like time. They talk a lot about time,
right.
especially when they're a bit older, like
Mm.
time, because they said, oh my God, I didn't use my time wisely. And I
Right.
remember once in a hospice in Dublin, I was a busy day. I was running to see somebody, and a lovely gentleman I used to go and visit, and he said to me, "Why are you always running?" And then he asked, "What are you looking for, and what are you running away from?" Three questions. I was like, "Oh my God!" I was like, "Yeah." Wasn't expecting that. I said, "No,
Yeah.
hang on, I'm helping you. You're not supposed to help me. I'm helping you." Let's not reverse the roles. But I was always in a rush, always rush because life is busy. You have to go
Yeah.
from one place to another place. And then we spoke about time, and this gentleman really sticks with me still to date. He said, like, remember, time is the only commodity that is limited. It's the most precious, but it's the limited commodity that you have.
It's
And you
amazing, isn't
can't
it?
get back time. So whatever you've lost is
On.
lost.
Yes.
You know?
Wow. I mean, that's a powerful thing to hear, isn't it? At the start of your day or the end of your day.
Oh, I can tell you that really kind of like I went back home and I was like, okay. had a couple of like disturbed nights, I
Yeah, I
have to
was
be
going to
honest.
say, it sounds
He opened a can of worms for me, I was like,
exactly
okay.
what are you running away from? I was like, that's deep. You've told us the kind of things that people are regretting from all these conversations with people at that stage of life. Would you say that there's any patterns in terms of how people are living that it's worth knowing
Yes,
now?
I mean, what I've heard again, I can only speak from my experience, is like, I wish I lived a life true to myself.
Right.
Because very often, like again, quite often actually, men and women have told me I didn't live my life. I didn't take any part in my life. That
Wow.
seems a bit odd now. But they said I just let life happen to me.
Yeah.
And I know we've heard probably that before as well, but we have a tendency of like, not everybody, thankfully, and now we know there's way to gain control and empower ourselves, but what the people end of life also taught me is like, your life, be an actor of your life, be the main character of your life, and make sure you drive your life, not that life drives you. Because most of the time, this is what's happening. We get dragged, and things happen, and we're just a victim of
Mm.
circumstances.
So true. So true. I
You
love
know?
that. That's a really
Mm.
powerful takeaway, isn't it? Because I think it's so
Yes.
easy to be
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a passive
Mm-hmm.
spectator or a passenger, and you to feel like everything's happening to you. I know it sounds like a
Mm-hmm.
cliche thing to say, but there you
No,
have
no, it's.
somebody who's actually at that stage of their life to say
Mm-hmm.
that. I think that it's really important to take that on board and to sit with it and to think about actually how active are you in your life versus just letting it happen. One of the other questions I had was how has being an end of life doula changed or impacted your view on fear and pressure and stress? You know, how do you respond to those things given the work that you do?
It would have asked me that question 15 years ago, I would have been like totally, totally different answer because I was mad, always busy. I'm still very busy, but I can reflect on what is really important in my life. What do I allow to stress me? So things that previously would have really stressed me, would have really made me feel overwhelmed, don't anymore. Like if I don't agree with somebody in the past, I would be ruminating over it and why, not anymore. This work as an end of life doula, this calling as well, teaches you that not only time is precious, but what are you giving your attention to? What are you allowing to disturb your peace while you're experiencing the joy of life?
That- That's really powerful takeaway because I think it's so easy, and especially now we live in such a crazy climate that there's all kinds of things that you can get sucked into, isn't it? So I think to hear somebody doing the work you're doing saying, actually, what is it that you're giving your attention to is something for us to all sit and kind of reflect on. So, first, before we kind of come towards the close, for people who we've talked about the fact that people don't talk about death and the people are um,
Mm-hmm.
death illiterate. What do you want people to know about death as an end of life doula and as someone who's worked with people extensively? What do you think that we all need to know, or that's misunderstood, or that's just really important that you wish more people talked about?
Well, the first thing is death is random. This is a very weird and strange sentence. Death
Mm,
is random because when we experience death in our life, we take it very personally.
mm,
What did I do to deserve this? Why did this happen to me? Death is random. It will happen to each one of us. So that's one certainty. But then it's random. So when it happens, it's not personal. It's a hard one to understand. And also, maybe the second thing is when in doubt or when uncomfortable about death, about, grief, don't say anything. Just be there for people. So if we feel uncomfortable, if we don't know, we're not all professionals around grief. I mean, I didn't get up one morning having, and I don't know everything, Jesus. No, far from it, no. But the most important thing when there is, death, when someone experiences death, around us is presence. This is key. So, and also, if we experience death ourselves, it's to remember that there's resources available and that there are people whose job it is to create a safe space for their grief to be witnessed and to be able to talk about death. I run death cafes, but there's loads of people running death cafes where we talk about death. It doesn't have to be just grief, anything related to death. So there is more and more now people, there's more and more people and resources to allow people to open up about death without necessarily grieving, just death in general. And remember, your presence can make a big difference in someone's life.
That's
So
true.
if you're uncomfortable about death, just be present. And if you, on the other hand, want to talk about it, there are resources, there are people whose job it is to hold space for you. And there's one thing that we have to also, maybe a reminder here is that when we go through grief linked to death, for example, grief of the death of a person, most of the time the people closer to us are not the ones who are the best resources. It's very often going to be the people who you don't necessarily know that well. They're going to get you more. Because people too close to us, it's not their job to hold space for us, you know. They try to, but they don't know how to. So that's why I mentioned about there are resources available. And it's important.
It is
You know?
important. It is important. In regarding grief, because we talked about the trauma,
Mm,
we've talked about the death, and
mm,
I kind of skipped over the grief aspect. So when people are coming to you in grief and people are stuck, what would you say is one of the or are the key things that keep people stuck in grief that prevents people from being able to
I'm going to
process or
come back
mm,
to time, because to
mm,
time, and because they think that there is one way to grieve.
right.
Because sometimes they'll say, well, my sister, two sisters lost their mother. One will say to me, but my sister is doing this now. She's back to work.
Yes.
Why can I not go back to work?
Mm,
Expectations, comparison, and timelines. Always the same thing. You think there is a way to grieve, so you compare yourselves and you compare your grief. Two children can lose their mother. They're going to be two different ways of grieving. So expectations, timeline, and one thing that keeps them stuck, we won't have time today to cover that, but there's about 6 needs of a griever. Someone in grief, the first 2 needs of a grieving person is to have their pain witnessed and their grief witnessed, to be able to express their feelings. Very often, somebody coming to see a profession didn't have their grief witnessed and didn't necessarily have the right environment to express their feelings, which keeps them stuck.
interesting. I did not, and that is, as you say, that's a topic for another time because it sounds like there's a lot there because that's not something I'm aware of. And when you say witnessed, that to me, I understand that as they need to be present with somebody as so
Correct.
it's not a
It's
case
like,
of being
yes,
in your
yeah.
room on your
No,
own,
no, 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 no,
right? So
no.
you're saying you need to be
It's like
seen.
you talk to me now, or I talk to you about somebody I lost, my
Mm,
grief.
mm,
You listen to me and you basically, not that we need to, but you validate my grief.
right, right.
You know, you say, oh yeah, I understand this. Whatever you use, you know,
Mm,
you witness.
right.
But some people, when they start to talk about their grief, what will happen is, oh, not again now.
Mm,
You know, come on.
yeah.
You invalidate the person and you invalidate their grief.
Wow. Thank you so much for touching on that. Um, this
Very well.
conversation has been so valuable, and there's been so much that I know everybody's taking away. I'm just conscious of time. So I think we'll leave it there. It's almost a to be continued, isn't it? Because with this grief
It
piece,
is, yes.
with the grief piece, the things you said, I was like, I've not heard of that. I don't know that. So I think we'll definitely have you back to talk about the grief piece. And another thing we didn't talk about is kind of the more intuitive aspects of your work because you do work in that space. And I know that that's a
Absolutely.
topic that many people are asking questions about. So we'll also explore that as well.
Oh, absolutely. I'm very happy. You know, I love what I do. So if I can
Yes.
spread awareness, and thank you for having me here today, Anthony.
No, it's been fantastic. So I guess your final words then for anybody who is experiencing, who's kind of struggling with some kind of trauma that they've experienced, or they're just feeling stuck, or they're going through grief, what would you say is something that you want people to kind of take away they can start doing, or that might help them even just hearing it? What would you say is the key takeaway from you?
Well, again, it's going to sound very simple, but it's okay to feel the way you feel. I think we don't hear a lot that it's okay to feel the way you feel. And second thing, and I'll leave it there, is help is available. We have to remember that because grief can be very isolating. Trauma as well, help is available, and it is okay to feel the way you feel because that's the way you feel.
Thank you so much, Nadia. It's been fantastic, and thank you for joining
Very
us until
welcome.
next
Thank you,
time.
everybody.